and to do all that their ambitions and the calling require of them. He will know that the next question session that he can raise this in is going to be on the 27th of February. I'll encourage him to do that, but I will also make sure the Secretary of State has heard what he has said.
Gavin Newlands.
Thank you much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Schools in my constituency are far more likely to travel to the Scottish Parliament for educational enrichment than this place. And obviously after the events of last night, where a third party's voice was silenced due to bullying and intimidation, and for no other reason, who can be surprised? But the Parliamentary Education Centre subsidises travel up to 75% of the cost, up to a value of £2,000. However, travel costs from Scotland, and don't be a surprise, are significantly higher, and the vast majority of schools cancelled due to costs, including 2 from my constituency just this week. So can the Leader perhaps provide for a statement to be made on how we can fix this inequity?
I thank the honourable gentleman for raising this question. He will know that I think it is the Finance Committee of the House that has recently done a review of the travel subsidy in different parts of the country, and there are some changes that are going to be made to that with regard to school visits and the opportunity for people from all parts of the UK to come to this place. Perhaps I could suggest to the honourable gentleman that he may wish to speak to the chair of the Finance Committee about that. She sits on the House of Commons Commission, and her recommendations come to us.
Andy Carter.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Homeowners on 2 recently built housing developments, one of which has been completed at Appleton Cross in my Warrington South constituency, were promised a GP surgery. The development has been completely finished, and the Section 106 money paid across, but there is no GP surgery, and this is now putting extreme pressure on the existing facilities that are provided elsewhere in Warrington South. Can I ask the Leader for a debate in government time to look at how we can ensure that when planning permission is agreed and the infrastructure that is needed to go with it is agreed, that the local authority responsible for approving that planning permission ensures that the GP surgeries are delivered as required?
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for raising this on behalf of his constituents. He will know that in the Government's Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, we introduced new powers to be able to create a new infrastructure levy to replace the existing system and of developer contributions, and it aims to generate more funding for infrastructure such as the honourable gentleman raises, GP surgeries, shops, for example, to mitigate the impact of that new development and make sure that new people moving into that area and increasing the population size, that their needs are served. We have committed to further consult on the design of that levy before drafting regulations, and he may wish to raise this directly with the Secretary of State on the 4th of March.
Mary Glindon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will the Leader of the House kindly join me in congratulating North Tyneside Benton Dean Primary School for topping the National Leaderboard for active travel when taking part in the charity Living Streets WOW Walk to School Travel Tracker. Working with Living Streets and North Tyneside Council since last October, Benton Dean School has reduced traffic outside the school gate and reached an average walk to school rate of 57%. And could she also ask the Transport Minister to support Living Street's call for a nationwide default ban on pavement parking to help improve safer routes for walking and wheeling to school, as it's now over 3 years since the government consulted on this issue?
Well, I'm sure we would all join in the congratulations that the Honourable Lady has sent to her local school. It is a tremendous achievement, and I thank her for raising it. I will not only make sure that the Secretary of State for Transport hears about her asks on pavement parking, but also I will encourage him to send a letter to her local school congratulating them on their achievements.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very proud to represent historic Runnymede and Weybridge. And I was present in the Chamber yesterday evening when 2 motions of great concern were passed without division. Now, I don't agree with the SNP on many issues, but I respect their position in this place as elected members of Parliament. And right now, it is on the record that the motions were passed unanimously, which, given clear vocal opposition, I believe misrepresents the will of Parliament. Does the Leader of the House share my deep concerns about the implications of this for our democracy and rule of law? And does she agree with me that opposition days must be upheld and respected in line with convention?
Order. The shadow leader of the House should not be shouting from the front bench. Just simply don't. Dr. Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does she agree with me that opposition days must be upheld and respected in line with convention as an essential part of democratic operation of this House? And will she work to remedy the injustice of yesterday's debate?
The House.
I agree with my honourable friend, which is why the government took the actions it did yesterday. It is not in the government's advantage to facilitate debates which are likely to be critical of the government, but it is in the interests of our democracy that we do so, which is why we went in and did what we did to protect particularly the rights of minority parties in this place. As I have said earlier in this session, I fully appreciate the frustration at the recording of and how that vote was recorded yesterday. I have raised this with the clerks and taken advice. It is a matter for the chair, and I'm afraid to tell the honourable gentleman that it will stand as it is.
Andrew Weston.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Kellogg's factory in my constituency is an iconic reminder of the industrial heritage of Trafford Park. Like so many of my constituents, I was shocked and saddened recently to hear of parent company Kellanova's plans to close the factory. Given the devastation that this causes not just to my local community but in particular to those 360 Kellogg's employees who now face such an uncertain future, could we have a debate in government time on how we can safeguard manufacturing jobs in this country now and into the future?
Well, I would certainly encourage the honourable gentleman to raise his latter point and the issue he's asking for a debate on with the Secretary of State at the next questions on the 7th of March. But I will also write on the honourable gentleman's behalf, if he has not already done so, to the Minister overseeing the redundancy service and also the Minister for Employment at the Department for Work and Pensions. They will be able to provide his office with support and help in ensuring that the interests of his constituents are taken care of and that they avoid hardship.
James Grundy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we all face difficult votes in this House. I myself saw the consequences of one of those votes when, after an Opposition Day debate some time ago, my elderly parents were threatened with being stabbed to death. It's the first time I've revealed this information publicly, and I know that other colleagues on all sides of the House will have been facing similar threats recently. I think, though, when we do vote on difficult matters, we should all do so under the same set of rules. I think that is very important. I think that yesterday, certainly many on this side of the House felt that the changing of the order of business meant that whilst entirely legitimately Labour MPs were protected from potential threats of violence and murder, people on this side of the House were consequentially more exposed to such threats. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that we cannot continue like this? Such breaches of procedure are unacceptable. Everyone's rights in this House to vote in the way they would wish and their security should be equal across all benches.
I completely agree with what my honourable friend has said, and I think he has made it very well. And I think that all members of this House, I hope, have got that message. With regard to intimidation, as I say, it is not just what is directed against us, it is directed against members of our family, perhaps most appallingly, honourable members' children as well. There have been many instances of that, and we will ensure that those individuals face the full force of the law. But I hope also whilst others are reflecting on what has happened, particularly in the last 24 hours. Those people who are also, whilst not committing a crime, are encouraging and giving licence to people on social media. They ought to reflect on their behaviour as well.
Ashley Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been here in this place about a year now, and I've spent almost all of that year trying to get some progress on the issues of agricultural flooding and water management boards. It's an issue that's of great concern to my constituents in rural West Lancashire. Now, an SI was expected on water management boards last summer. We've not seen hide nor hair of it. In answer to a written question, the Secretary of State has said that this will come after a consultation, but that's not been scheduled. Can the Leader of the House advise me how this relatively simple instrument can be expedited so that my constituents can move forward on this really pressing matter?
Yeah.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her diligence in pursuing this matter for her constituents. She can obviously raise this matter at the next question session, but I sense her frustration, and I will write to the Secretary of State at DEFRA to ask him to update her office.
Simon Baines.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In view of the Labour Party hijacking the SNP's Opposition Day debate yesterday, can I ask the Leader whether we can have a debate in government time to discuss the role of the Standards and Privileges or Procedure Committee, and whether there should be an inquiry into the role of the Leader of the Opposition and his Chief of Staff and the Opposition Chief Whip in their roles in the Speaker overruling the advice of the clerks on yesterday's Opposition Day debate?
Well, I would refer the honourable gentleman to the remarks I gave in response to the honourable lady opposite. I think the Leader of the Opposition needs to reflect on what he did yesterday, as well as what everyone else will have been doing.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On Tuesday past, in a point of order to your colleague, the Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Lady for Doncaster Central, in relation to Sinn Féin's shorts monies. The Honourable Lady, the Deputy Speaker, suggested that we should bring it as a question, a business question day, so I've done that, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the advice of that Honourable Lady. As the House is aware, Northern Ireland Assembly has been re-established. Previous to that, MLA salaries had been reduced for a period of at least 2 years. The clear rationale behind that, of course, is that if elected MLAs were not doing their job, they should not receive full pay. And the general public, of course, saw the sense of it and supported that decision. Since the establishment of the concept of representative monies in 2006 as a separate analogous scheme to the short money scheme, over £11 million has been paid to a small number of Sinn Féin MPs. Sinn Féin who don't attend debates, who don't scrutinise legislation for the purposes of either amending or voting for it or against it, and so monies paid from the public purse intended for that purpose are not used to that end. With that in mind, this has been raised by the Honourable Member for East London Derry, by my party leader, the Honourable Gentleman for Upper Bann, and other colleagues, including myself. Just when will Sinn Féin monies be reduced, and when will necessary steps to speak and vote continuing unacceptable abuse of representative monies in this lifetime of this Parliament actually happen? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for getting that on record, and I have had some correspondence with other members regarding this. He will know that this is primarily a matter for the House, and he will have helped his particular point of view by getting it on record today, and I've listened to it.
Henry Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Research shows that those who intentionally inflict cruelty on animals often are also guilty of offences such as child abuse, domestic violence, and involved in bullying and organised crime as well. Can we have a statement from the Home Secretary on the establishment of an animal offenders register?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the question, but also all the work that he is doing on animal welfare, which he is very well known for. He can ask this of the Home Secretary directly on the 26th of February, but I think it is a very interesting suggestion that he has made, and it is, of course, a very clear indicator of further and perhaps more serious crimes to come.
Anna Firth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to place on record, Madam Deputy Speaker, my thanks to the Speaker for returning to the House last night and for the clear explanation and heartfelt apology he made then, and for his comments today. I was in the House from about 1 o'clock. I was in the House from 1 o'clock through to the end. I spoke in the debate. I came here to represent my constituents, and I was unable to, and that was a shame on all of us. But if there was any interference in the process, that has to be looked into. Right. But Mr. Speaker came to this House, he's apologised twice, and on behalf of the people of Southend, that apology is accepted. As somebody who's come into this House very recently under very difficult circumstances, Mr. Speaker has been a great help and support and shown me and the Amis family a great deal of kindness. But the point remains, if long-standing rules and conventions were put aside because of Mr. Speaker's concern about members of this House, and if the ultimate cause of that, it's not what he said, if the ultimate cause of that is Islamic extremism, this is a very serious situation, and we have as a House to look into this. We have to have an inquiry as to exactly why those rules and conventions were not abided by yesterday, because those rules over many centuries have been developed not just to protect us, but to protect our democracy, and that did not happen yesterday. And I do ask and repeat all the calls for an inquiry as to exactly what went on yesterday. Was he bullied?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, first of all, can I thank the Honourable Lady for getting her views about the Speaker on record. She has done that very well today, and I'm sure he would appreciate it. I reiterated at the start of my response to the Honourable Lady opposite that we need to, if we are going to do better than we did yesterday, we have to focus on the reasons why things were done. This House has never kowtowed to terrorists. The members of this House will never be dissuaded in what they think is the right course of action by intimidation, bullying or threats. That is not what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday was that the procedures of this House were corrupted to advantage one party. That is what happened. To the disadvantage of members on these benches and to the disadvantage of minority parties. We have to be clear about that. We have to be clear about that. And I'll tell you why, Madam Deputy.
Order. I think the honourable gentleman's trying to make a point of order for me. I don't know what he's trying to say. I'm sorry?
Isn't the word corruption unparliamentary?
Oh, no. No, please. It really is time to calm down and take the heat out of this. So I think, really, let us calm down. I didn't hear what the Leader of the House said. Leader of the House.
I fully understand why honourable members have raised this point on intimidation, but I would just say to right honourable and honourable members to reflect on the message that sends to people outside of this chamber. This House will not be moved, and members of this House will not be moved in carrying out their duties to the people that sent us here because of intimidation and threats going on outside. That has not happened. That is not the reason why this was done yesterday, and we should ensure that we are doing everything we can to ensure that that remains the case. It is the case, it will be the case, and it must be the case.
Thank you. That concludes questions to the point of order. Mr. Blackman, points of order are taken after statements, but if your point of order relates directly to the business that we have just concluded, I'll take it. Does it? Then I'll take your point of order now.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The long-standing convention in this place is that during oral questions, for the convenience of the House, ministers may choose to group similar questions to be answered together. When that happens, that's with the permission of the Chair, and by custom and practice, the individuals whose questions are grouped are notified by the department in advance that that will happen. Yeah. For 2 times now, my questions have been grouped when they've been lower down the order paper, and I've not been granted the courtesy of being able to ask my questions or been told in advance that that was going to happen. As a result of which, I haven't been present for when those questions have been called. Now, clearly, this is unacceptable on all sides. So could, through your good offices, encourage the Leader of the House to reinforce the view on departments that they must notify members in advance that their questions are being grouped.
The honourable gentleman raises a very important point, and as it happens, I recall the first of the incidents that he describes because I was in the chair, I called him, and he wasn't there. And knowing that he is an assiduous attender of this chamber, I was very surprised, and the honourable gentleman then told me that he hadn't been here because he didn't know his question was grouped. There is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that members ought to be contacted and that the department ought to be sure that members have received a message that their question has been grouped. And indeed, grouping is with the permission of the chair. And it will be stopped if it's not properly carried out, I should think. Is the Leader of the House happy with that, or does she want to add?
What he said.
Leader of the House, further to the point.
I've heard what the honourable gentleman has said. Madam Deputy Speaker is absolutely right, and if he wants to give me the details of the department, which I'm confident is not the Ministry of Defence, I will deal with it.
Excellent. Point of order, Mr. Linden. If the point of order relates to this business.
It does indeed relate to the proceedings that we've just had. I had hoped that Mr. Speaker would be in the chair for this point of order. I did give notice to the chair that I would be making this point of order, and I've given notice to the Leader of the House. It is with a huge amount of regret, because I am somebody who likes to speak on a personal basis, that I have signed LED motion 412, indicating that I do not have confidence in Mr. Speaker. Now, if my understanding is correct, he outlined today that his desire is to seek to allow the House to express its view. Now, the reality is that in the space of probably about 13 or 14 hours, scores of MPs, approaching I think 60 at the last check, have signed that early day motion expressing no confidence in the Speaker of this House. Can I ask you, Madam Deputy Speaker, to ask the Speaker to make clear to the Government that he has no objection to that motion of no confidence being tabled and allowing the House to express its view as he said he would? Because the reality is, whether we like it or not, the conduct of the Speaker of the House of Commons has raised wider questions. And the fact that 60 members of this House have indicated they do not have confidence in them means that that has now got to be put to a vote, and he cannot object to that.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his very clear point of order. Let me clarify. He is asking me to convey to Mr. Speaker the message that he has just given and the question he has just asked, and I can undertake to convey that to Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Clark-Smith, is the point of order directly in relation? Mr. Clark-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On a point of order, further to the point of order that was made by my right honourable friend for North East Somerset. Previously, I seek your guidance as to why a division was not called yesterday. It was clear there were both shouts of aye and no, and it's clear from the standing orders that in this scenario a division should be called.
I understand the honourable gentleman's concern, and I thank him for his point of order. I will simply say this. At the point just after 7 o'clock last night, when divisions were called, when questions were put to the House, the level of noise in this chamber and the amount of turmoil in this chamber made it impossible for the then occupant of the chair, my colleague, Madam Deputy Speaker, who was doing her best in very difficult circumstances to ascertain whether she could hear any calls of no. She has told me that she could not hear calls of no, and she acted accordingly. It's always very easy to go back in hindsight and examine what each of us might have thought happened, but I can assure the House that Dame Rosie did her very best in difficult circumstances, and that she thought she was carrying out, and thinks, and I think too, that she was carrying out the wishes of the House at that time. I do appreciate, as I was standing right there at that moment, I do appreciate that other people have different views on that matter. But I hope that the honourable gentleman and the House will accept my assurance that Dame Rosie did her very best in difficult circumstances. Thank you. I'm very reluctant to take further points of order. Is it directly related to this business?
Yes.
In that case, point of order, Mr. Alan Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the point of order, I seek your guidance, and perhaps maybe as Chair of Ways and Means you might be able to give further clarity. As regards the response the Speaker gave earlier in the session there to the SNP group leader about the sequencing of the decisions they took. Now, yesterday, the guidance he gave at the start of the debate, that he said there was a precedent for taking another the main party opposition amendment to the smaller parties amendment. But in the letter from the clerks, it's quite clear there's no precedent on that. He also said it was about having the widest possible debate. But then last night, the rationale changed to security, and that's where at the session just there, Mr Speaker really honed in on security being the primary reason for the decision he made. And he intimated that lives were at risk. Now, that's a very grave matter, and implicitly implies that the SNP motion as it stood was effectively putting members' lives at risk in terms of the decisions they were going to make. It implies that somehow debating the Labour amendment somehow takes away the security risk, which actually then infers an assumption in how members are going to vote. Why was the security concerns not shared with other party leaders? And what did the security service say? And doesn't this set a precedent that mob rule can actually change the business of the House?
No, I have to stop the honourable gentleman there. He is trying to continue the debate, and he is asking again questions that Mr Speaker has already come to the chamber and answered. Mr Speaker has dealt with those matters, and it's not for me to deal with them any further. I think there will be further opportunities to explore these matters, both in public and in private, and the leader of the honourable gentleman's party will no doubt be having discussions with Mr Speaker. But I'm not going to continue these matters. If, sir, it is another point of order directly relating to this business, I will take it now. Dr. Ben Spencer.
On a point of order, thank you for taking my point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think this is an issue of quite substantial constitutional importance, which I seek your guidance on. I think it's been made fairly clear in my question to the Leader of the House, the member of Bassett Law, several of the members, that there are concerns regarding the motions which were taken yesterday evening. In fact, the BBC is reporting that the House has approved the motions yesterday. The Labour Party is putting out adverts saying the House approved the motions yesterday, yet there is concern as to whether this was a valid vote going forwards. It is critical that the public have faith in our democratic process. What mechanism is there to void the motions yesterday and have a rerun?
No. Well, once again, the honourable gentleman reiterates matters which have already been considered, and I plead on behalf of the people that we all represent that this matter should now calm down, and that tempers and anger should not be encouraged to flourish further. But these are matters which might have to be further explored, and Mr. Speaker and the Leader of the House have both made it clear to the House this morning that there will be other opportunities to consider these matters and to fully debate them. Now, I will take no further points of order on this, recognising that members on all sides of the House have strong feelings, most of which have been expressed, and I do now plead for calm. As we move to the statement on Ukraine, Secretary of State for Defence, Grant Shapps.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to update the House on the current conflict in Ukraine as we prepare to mark 2 years since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion. Like many in this House, I remember exactly where I was on the 24th of